3 signed rejection folders sat untouched on the main conference table at Nike's Beaverton headquarters. 3 of the top 10 players in world golf stood up and walked out of the room together. They left an estimated $150 million in contract renewals sitting on that table. Nobody in the sports industry predicted a unified revolt inside Nike's elite roster. Corporate executives expected a standard signature. What they got instead was a swift exit that threatens Nike's entire position in professional golf. This is the story of that closed-door summit, the unexpected demand that insulted golf's top stars, and the walkout that broke Nike's hold on the sport. Nike clearly miscalculated their leverage, but the bigger question is whether these stars risked their legacy or pulled off the ultimate power move. If you are a golf fan who wants the real story behind tour drama, subscribe right now and drop your take in the comments below. Now, let us get into it. Private jets landed hours apart at separate airfields near Portland to keep golf media entirely in the dark. Each athlete arrived with a distinct team of legal advisors, agents, and brand managers. On paper, Nike treated this high-stakes summit as a victory lap. The company had pulled out of manufacturing hard equipment like clubs and balls years ago, choosing to channel every dollar into apparel endorsements. That pivot meant these specific athlete partnerships carried the entire weight of Nike Golf's public existence. Wearing the swoosh was long considered the ultimate status symbol on the PGA Tour, a mark reserved exclusively for major winners and global icons. Beaverton executives approached the meeting with complete confidence. They assumed no player would risk losing the global marketing reach of the world's largest sportswear giant, but executive management had secretly drafted a restructured contract model weeks prior. Corporate leadership believed the tightening sports market meant athletes had fewer alternatives. They believed the swoosh logo was more valuable than the individual players swinging the clubs. That single arrogance created a massive blind spot. To fully grasp why this summit turned into an operational disaster, you have to look at how Nike constructed its golf empire in the first place. Decades ago, the brand entered golf by spending record sums to lock down single dominant icons. When a player wore that logo on Sunday, television cameras on ESPN and major networks focused on every swing, every putt, and every emotion. That exposure built a multi-million-dollar apparel business on the back of pure athlete performance. Over time, however, Nike stopped competing in hardware innovations. They no longer supplied drivers, irons, or golf balls to tour players. When a player stepped onto the tee, their performance depended entirely on clubs manufactured by outside companies. Nike was left paying massive retainers purely for chest real estate on a shirt and logo placements on a hat. When financial audits hit the desk of Nike's top brass ahead of this meeting, internal accountants flagged the soaring endorsement budgets. Marketing spend had drifted far above projected returns for the quarter. The board demanded a tighter structure. Executive management decided that instead of offering traditional guaranteed pay, they would force players to share the financial risk. They drafted a uniform, non-negotiable template designed to slash base retainers and lock up intellectual property rights across the board. They planned to present this template to their 3 biggest active assets all at once, expecting the players to sign without unified resistance. The industry assumed this was a routine extension, but a text message sent 12 hours before the meeting reveals the 3 players had already agreed on a secret pact if Nike crossed one specific line. Negotiations opened with the first superstar, a reigning multi-time major champion whose signature red apparel line had driven millions in global sales. For nearly a decade, this player served as the undisputed anchor of Nike's Sunday broadcast visibility. His presence guaranteed top-tier coverage during final rounds at the US Open and the Masters. Boardroom slides showcased his career highlights, but the financial sheets presented next told a very different narrative. Nike proposed stripping away his guaranteed yearly base retainer by over 40%. Instead, executives offered a complex tier of performance bonuses tied strictly to major victories and specific world ranking targets. Representing attorneys immediately pushed back, pointing out that guaranteed retainers reflect historical value and broadcast presence, not volatile week-to-week results. Nike's lead negotiator held firm, arguing that modern corporate sports marketing required accountability over tradition. The superstar remained silent, taking notes as his legal team fought the proposal. This first superstar understood his market position better than the executives sitting across from him. In modern golf, major champions drive retail apparel sales because fans want to wear what wins on the toughest courses sanctioned by the USGA and the R&A. Cutting a base retainer while demanding identical broadcast exposure was an immediate red flag. His management team knew that outside investors were already watching these renewal cycles closely. Independent clothing brands were actively looking for established major winners to anchor new golf divisions. If Nike was no longer willing to guarantee top-tier baseline capital, the logic for staying exclusively tied to the swoosh began to crumble. The atmosphere turned cold instantly. The executive team assumed this first player would eventually bend under financial pressure, unaware that he was simply waiting to see how Nike treated the rest of his peers. Corporate leaders thought they were dealing with an isolated contract dispute, until the second superstar stepped up and exposed an even bigger insult hidden inside the agreement. Step forward the second superstar, the current tour leader in scoring average and the dominant force across weekend television ratings. Where the first champion brought veteran authority, this second star brought pure eyeballs and broadcast market control. Network camera crews spent every weekend following his group because his aggressive play created instant highlight clips for ESPN broadcast reels. When his agent reviewed the second folder, he discovered a restrictive clause that went far beyond base salaries. Nike demanded absolute ownership and trademark rights over all personal logos, custom apparel sub-brands, and off-course lifestyle lines created during the term of the contract. This clause directly blocked the player from launching independent business ventures or equity partnerships outside Beaverton's direct control. Modern golfers had watched figures like Tiger Woods and Jason Day build massive standalone value by controlling their personal brands. Demanding total intellectual property control was seen as an explicit effort to keep players trapped in corporate dependency. The legal representation for this second superstar raised immediate objections to the contract language. They pointed out that his personal brand had grown independently across global tours, generating revenue streams outside standard tournament play. Surrendering those trademark rights to Nike meant forfeiting millions in future business ventures, licensing deals, and custom product lines. Nike's corporate counsel responded by claiming that the global scale of Nike's retail footprint justified total ownership. They argued that any design, logo, or mark associated with the athlete while under contract was fundamentally built using Nike's marketing machine. The second superstar pushed his folder across the table, making his position clear without raising his voice. Nike executives attempted to smooth over the room, suggesting that Nike's global distribution network was worth giving up individual rights. The agent countered that equity mattered more than corporate distribution. Nike management believed they could still salvage the deal by offering concessions to their youngest star, but his sudden reaction caught everyone completely off guard. Enter the third superstar, the youngest member of the group and the top apparel sales generator among Gen Z golf fans worldwide. He brought social media dominance, viral highlight reach, and a massive connection to the next generation of consumers. Nike executives viewed him as the essential bridge into the future of golf fashion. Yet his proposed contract contained a mandatory digital quota requiring endless commercial shoots, forced social media promotional posts, and mandatory sponsor events during off weeks. His representative argued that forcing a world-class athlete into a heavy content schedule during competitive major weeks was unacceptable. Modern tournament golf requires brutal physical preparation, precise practice rounds, and mental focus. Cramming sponsor obligations into competitive windows actively harms a player's ability to contend at elite events like the US Open. The conversation deteriorated rapidly as Nike executives refused to remove the content requirements. They viewed his social media reach as corporate property that needed to be monetized daily. A senior Nike vice president reportedly responded with a blunt observation, suggesting that without the swoosh on his chest, the player's personal marketability would drop dramatically within 12 months. That comment crossed the line. The youngest star stood up from his chair immediately. The veteran major champion and the scoring leader stood up right beside him. They gathered their documents, left the unsigned contract folders on the table, and walked out of the room together. The physical departure left Nike's negotiating team completely frozen. Executive management had structured the summit believing they held all the cards. They expected high-pressure tactics to force each agent into line. Instead, they witnessed a synchronized walkout executed by three athletes who realized that their combined market power far exceeded Nike's corporate leverage. Executives assumed the walkout was a theatrical negotiation tactic, until an urgent notice arrived 30 minutes later proving the split was already final. An official formal notification from the collective management agency landed directly in executive inboxes before the team even left the building. The letter formally withdrew all three players from further renewal talks, citing a fundamental breakdown in trust and brand alignment. Panic hit the upper management floor almost immediately. Losing one superstar was a PR hurdle, Losing 3 simultaneously wiped out the core of Nike Golf's active athlete portfolio in under an hour. By the following morning, news of the walkout filtered down to tournament driving ranges, player lounges, and caddy shacks across the PGA Tour. Tour veterans expressed genuine shock that 3 top-10 competitors had rejected a combined $150 million over principal and equity rights. Rivals in the industry began making phone calls before the afternoon practice rounds even ended. Inside Beaverton, emergency operational meetings replaced standard morning briefings. Department heads realized the immediate supply chain and marketing fallout of this decision. Millions of dollars in planned apparel runs, seasonal retail catalogs, and promotional material for upcoming major championships featured these 3 specific players. Store displays scheduled for global rollouts had to be pulled or completely redesigned. Production lines in overseas manufacturing plants were already cutting fabrics and printing logos based on contracts that no longer existed. Nike was suddenly looking at massive inventory write-downs alongside a total collapse of their tour marketing strategy. Nike's corporate communications division scrambled to construct a spin strategy. They drafted public statements framing the situation as a planned corporate strategy to reallocate funds toward broader grassroots golf initiatives and lifestyle marketing. They wanted investors to believe Beaverton was voluntarily stepping away from expensive athlete retainers. Nike tried to control the narrative by leaking reports that they willingly let the stars go, but internal financial ledgers proved the loss was a catastrophic self-inflicted wound. Internal marketing figures revealed that Nike's golf apparel sales relied heavily on organic Sunday broadcast minutes. Having 3 elite performers constantly featured in leaderboards during major championships generated hundreds of millions in unearned media value annually on networks like ESPN. Stripping those 3 names from the roster instantly reduced Nike's TV visibility during peak tournament broadcasts by nearly 30%. Calculations by independent media agencies estimated the loss in equivalent advertising value at tens of millions of dollars per season. Furthermore, the corporate claim that Nike could easily replace these icons with younger prospects ignored tournament realities. Developing elite talent takes years, and winning on tour is never guaranteed. Replacing proven top-10 consistency with unproven potential is an extreme gamble that rarely pays off in premium sports apparel. To make matters worse, retail partners began asking hard questions about upcoming seasonal shipments. Major sporting goods chains and golf pro shops stock inventory based on player visibility. When fans watch a major tournament on weekend television, they walk into golf shops the following week looking for the exact shirts, hats, and outerwear worn by the tournament leaders. Without these 3 superstars anchoring Sunday leaderboards, retail buyers began cutting their advance orders for Nike apparel lines. Floor space in major golf outlets was quickly reassigned to aggressive rival brands that were actively signing tour talent. Nike's internal projections showed a direct correlation between losing these 3 players and a sharp decline in retail footprint across North America and Europe. The walkout also created an unprecedented vacuum in the golf market. Rival apparel companies, private equity funds, and direct-to-consumer athletic brands recognized that 3 of the biggest names in sports were suddenly free agents without apparel restrictions. Losing 30% of their broadcast reach was a massive disaster, but what these 3 players put into motion next threatens Nike's entire future dominance in golf. All 3 players shifted their focus toward equity ownership instead of traditional cash retainers. Rather than accepting flat endorsement fees from traditional legacy brands, they began structuring deals that gave them direct equity stakes, board seats, and profit-sharing models with rising boutique golf labels. This move mirrors a broader shift across global sports, where modern superstars refuse to act as simple walking billboards for corporate entities. By owning their personal logos and controlling their apparel designs, these 3 players unlocked long-term wealth that far exceeds any flat salary Nike offered in Beaverton. Private equity groups stepped in immediately to fund custom clothing lines and global distribution networks built specifically around these 3 athletes. Smaller, agile brands that prioritize performance fabrics and athlete equity are rapidly capturing market share from legacy corporations that failed to adapt. The financial infrastructure supporting these new deals changed the entire landscape of golf endorsements. Instead of waiting for a legacy corporation to approve designs or pay out quarterly retainers, the players became co-owners of their respective brand directions. They took direct control over fabric selection, fit, color palettes, and retail pricing strategies. When they step onto the range at a major championship today, every hat, shirt, and accessory they wear represents an asset they directly own. Every television camera angle on ESPN builds equity in their own companies, rather than driving profit for an outside corporate board in Beaverton. Nike now finds itself in an unfamiliar position on tour. For 30 years, the swoosh represented the absolute peak of golf stardom and authority. Today, Sunday leaderboards feature independent brands and player-owned logos, while Nike's presence fades into the background. The swoosh once set the rules of sports endorsement without debate. 3 world-class golfers just proved that when top athletes align against corporate overreach, the balance of power shifts permanently. Modern sports history was rewritten in that Beaverton boardroom, and Nike is left watching the new era unfold from the gallery. Drop swoosh in the comments and tell us, will Nike ever regain its dominance in golf, or is their era officially over? If real golf drama and insider stories matter to you, subscribe right now. We cover all of it.